Hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 13th, 2023 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. On our agenda, I'd like to start with the roll call. So, sir, if you could do that.
For Bond,
Here.
Bout,
Here.
Crawford.
Here.
Nicole.
Here.
Dubasia.
Here. That's been a while since we've had all of our permanents here, so that's great. Nice to see that happen.
Back.
Yeah, welcome back. Yeah, thanks for bringing the weather.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Second item on our agenda tonight is the approval of the agenda. And is there anyone that has any corrections or amendments or additions they would like to change on tonight's agenda? And if we don't have, I would like to do a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Just need a motion real quick. Yep, motion in a
I
second.
move we approve the agenda. as
Oh, I need a motion.
Yep.
first. All right, that's right.
I'll second that.
Sorry, I knew we did a voice vote, but I forgot about the
Perfect.
motion.
Yep.
We're back to a voice now as compared to roll
Yeah.
call and everything.
Yeah, we're back to that.
Okay,
Forgot about the motion.
all right, gotcha.
All right. And then third item was,
Wait, we didn't do the actual.
We got a vote.
oh,
Yeah,
geez, wow.
Got a motion and a second.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
But then isn't it a voice vote after that?
Yes.
On this is fine, yep.
So
You want roll call or you want?
all signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. How's that?
That works.
What's
As
in the-
opposed to the yays. Okay, now we can go to the approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2023 meeting. And I think we have enough people here that we can vote on those. There was there four of us, I believe, were attending that meeting.
I would move the adoption of the March 9 minutes. I'll second.
Okay. Crawford made the motion, Bob seconded. I have a motion and we'll go to voice vote. All signify by saying aye if you approve.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now, item number 4, public comments. To the point where we ask if anybody has any public comments they would like to make on any items on the agenda or not on the agenda, I guess, at this point in time. Anyone in the audience that has anything they would like to say at this point? Are there is there anyone online with a hand up?
Yeah.
Guess not?
Okay.
Okay. Then we will move on from public comments on to unfinished business, which have none. And so item number 6 is new business, and we have 4 applications tonight to go through. So we've got a pretty solid agenda. The first one on the agenda is 350 Mason Street, which is for screening and parking space. I would like to have our zoning administrator at this time give his review of that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a dimensional variance for the construction of a new bed and breakfast parking area at 350 Mason Street after the demolition of the existing structures. The proposal requires a dimensional variance to eliminate the screening requirement instead of the required landscape separation strip at least 5 feet in width along the property lines and streets on which the off-street parking is located, and parking spaces with a length of 18 feet instead of the minimum of 20 feet. By way of background, the property was actually recently approved for a 2-story bed and breakfast establishment with 3 on-site parking spaces. The site plan was developed in accordance with all applicable zoning requirements. The approved plan shows a row of 3 parking spaces, and the row is parallel to the street to the east of the building. The applicant has a preference for a different site plan layout, which would provide some additional parking, but would need some variances to accomplish that from his perspective. The proposed plan that's in your packet. So the approved plan's in your packet. The proposed plan, as part of the application, is there as well. It shows a row of 8 spaces along the east side of the building, perpendicular to the street, which essentially shows where he's shortening the length of the parking spaces because of the need for a 22-foot drive lane behind the spaces. And then there would be insufficient room for a 5-foot landscape strip along the east property line to comply with the ordinance as well. So the applicant has a representative here tonight, Mr. Cole, who I believe is happy to present more information in their request.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ryan, for that information. Then I would like to call the hearing to order and ask if the applicant would like to present, or if someone, if representing the applicant would like to present the information to us.
My name is Matt Cole with Rosine and Associates. I'm the owner's representative and their civil engineer. Mark wasn't able to be here, but he is on Zoom. If you have any
Okay.
questions for him. So as Ryan summarized, we did have a plan that's approved with 3, but we've got 8 units in this bed and breakfast. And knowing how there's a premium need for parking in the city, especially as the weather gets warmer, he said, you know what? I'd rather pay more money, because normally, you have a variance request and they want to save money. Here he wants to invest more money into the city and provide more parking so we can get some of the parking for his tenants off the street. So there isn't as big of a need. And so we're proposing 8 spaces. So there's 1 for every unit as opposed to the required 3. A little bit of background too, along the east property line, there was a street before that's been vacated. And each owner got half the street of the neighboring property owner. And right now, the pavement's still there. And so the neighbor mentioned that he prefers this layout as well, instead of having the shrubs in between them, because that way he's got more asphalt where he can turn into his driveway and garage better. Otherwise, if we put the shrubs there, in order to make that turn, he's going to drive onto his grass. So he's going to have to do something different. So and then we're only asking for the variance on that 5-foot buffer strip to the east. We're still proposing the shrubs that are needed along the street. So, the one who would have the greatest impact would be the neighbor, and he's with supporting the variance again, because it provides better access to his driveway and works better for him. So again, we're looking for 8 spots to get some of the parking for these tenants off the public street. Even though the owner is aware that it's going to be more expensive for him to construct it this way. Lots of times on other municipalities, we see, the length requirements for stalls 20 to 18, and then sometimes even the city of Grand Rapids, you see some smaller ones. So even though we're asking for that 2-foot variance, there are a lot of municipalities that do allow the 18. Granted, we know you're not going to have some of the big trucks that fit in there, because more people go to smaller cars. We're just thinking, okay, if you got a big truck, then maybe you need to park out on the street, but at least we can get more cars off the road. So that's really what we're requesting here. We think that we meet the requirements of a variance, again, because we have that existing street, which is unique to the property. We have the neighbors' support that's adjacent to us. And so, we're just asking for consideration of that. If you have any questions or want to talk to it further, we're glad to answer any.
Okay. Well, all right, Matt, thank you. We more than likely may have some questions later. That happens quite often. Okay. So at this point in time, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak, let's say, in favor of the applicant's variance and use, or applicant's variance they're looking for? Nothing else? Anyone online that's looking to speak that we know of? No. 0 there, right? Any other speaking they want to do against, for? I'll just kind of call it again here one more time. It's our process to make sure we don't miss somebody. Okay. At that point in time, I would like to ask, I'll close the public portion of it.
Mr. Chair, this sort of clear, you probably saw it in your packet. There was a letter that was submitted
Oh, yeah, it was.
by the neighbor.
The neighbor, yeah.
Yep, that did indicate his support for the project. So that's clear that there was at least that public comment submitted to all of you.
Yes, I believe,
That was the only letter submitted?
Correct.
yeah.
The neighbor next door?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. From Tom Sedulkis, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Did you guys all have a chance to read the letter? If you're,
Yes, sir.
Did you just?
I read.
Yes.
all right, good, fine. And then, so in other words, no other correspondence, right? Other than that letter, this letter.
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Got it. We all read that. Okay, thank you. Then we will go ahead and go into deliberation and close the public portion. And have some questions amongst ourselves here and go through the standards.
I have a question for Ryan, if I may.
Sure.
Ryan, they're seeking a variance for the screening.
Mhm.
Right?
Correct.
And then as far as the 8 parking spots go, do we have, is that within our purview to approve if it's on their property?
So the plan that's presented, they met the zoning ordinance requirements for the parking spots that are required.
Right.
Right,
Oh, so the 3 required spots.
so they met the 3 required. So they're fine as far as parking compliance. There's nothing that says they can't provide more parking, but in this case, in order to provide more parking in accordance with the plan that they would like, this is where they've requested their variances.
Right. I want to be clear on what the variance is,
So the variance is to shorten the parking spaces from,
even though it's on their property.
even though it's on their property,
Okay,
correct?
gotcha.
So it's a screening and a
Yes, right.
dimensional.
And the dimensions of the
So it's a
spots.
Dimensional and a screening
Right.
variance.
Right, gotcha.
So there's really two variances.
Correct, 2 requests.
I just wanted to clarify that.
So I have a question.
So sorry,
No, go ahead, finish, Kate.
just to throw in, Dick, then you can go, is as it is right now, this is a conforming and approved lot or permitted
Plan, yeah.
use, right?
Yeah.
As it's, not as it's came to us prior to this, with the 3 and the buffering, it meets all the standards for a permit.
Correct. They've been issued a zoning permit for the plan that includes the 3 parking spots.
Parking and the buffer.
And the buffer. And what was the buffer?
So it included that vegetation strip that was required along the street and along the neighbor's property. So if you look on page, I know we have a lot of pages here this evening, so,
It's this one, right?
all right.
Mine's not numbered. but-
Yeah.
All right, page 16 of your packet. Now it's kind of small on the bottom, so there's 2 plans. The plan that they're proposing was listed first in your packet, and then the second plan was the plan that was approved. And yeah, we can maybe pull it up on here too, so.
That's the existing one that was approved.
Correct, with the 3 spots, and you can see the screening along that east property line that met the zoning requirement.
Right, I see that now.
Yep.
So he's requesting to alleviate that. He doesn't want that. Correct?
Some of it would still be.
Right, he's got a portion of it along the east property line, but not to the,
Not the entire thing.
not, that would meet the requirement, correct?
Now, St. Joe Street, Ryan goes all the way up to the end of that house. I went over there and looked at it. Looks like as it goes up, almost all the way up into the hill.
And St. Joseph was vacated.
Yeah,
Yep, so
okay,
street was vacated, so at this point, half went to current,
yep.
the 350 Mason, and then half went to his neighbor. Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't look to me like they could, with what buffer they show, that if they have to have that they can even get into the last 2 spaces.
Yeah,
Unless I'm
all about that myself.
top down, it doesn't look functional.
Be tricky.
Yeah, I get,
That's the
I
current
think that's just
approach.
about where you're
If you go up a page,
elevation starts up or something.
Yeah, that too.
that's what they want.
Oh, it does show elevation line there if you look at it,
Mhm.
but I don't know what that elevation line is showing.
What's the standard width of the parking there, Ryan? 18 feet or no, not, I'm sorry, what's the standard width of a parking?
Width or length?
I'll take both.
Okay, I'll give you what our ordinance requires. Give me just a second to pull it up here.
Length is 20. It looks like the width
So-
is the same.
Yeah, so our ordinance requires that it be at least 9 feet wide and 20 feet in length.
And that's what this lays out to? For the 8? Is 9 by 20?
9/18.
9/18.
9 by 18, I'm sorry. 9 by 18. So if they were to stay conforming. Let's see, I don't want to say that. How far out does the buffering have to go if they have, I guess I go back to the other one, it goes out further, right? Is there a requirement how much buffering you have to have? You have to buffer the parking? Is that what it is?
Right, so the way the screening regulation works, that all off-street parking shall have a properly maintained landscape separation strip at least 5 feet in length and width along the property lines and streets on which the off-street parking is located.
There's an additional one, though. Can you put up 154, 142? Screening between land uses.
Difference of screening between residential and commercial.
Well, what it says, they can call it up. Any project for which the site plan is required or whenever a non-residential use or multiple family dwelling abuts a residentially zoned or used property, screening shall be constructed along all adjoining boundaries with residentially zoned or used properties. So that standard would seem to go beyond the off-street parking standard and require screening all the way around this building. And then it further states at the end of 154, 142, paragraph 5. The zoning board of appeals may require or waive any fencing, screening, landscaping, or buffering as may be provided for in this section as a condition of a variance or other authorization in whatever manner necessary to achieve an identified public purpose. The zoning board of appeals shall record the reason for the condition and clearly specify what is required in any approval granted. So there has to be an identified public purpose to eliminate screening according to that standard. And you could say that getting more cars off the street is a public purpose, but that's not in our zoning ordinance. Our zoning ordinance says 3 parking spaces are required and 3 parking spaces are allowed. And we've also been informed there are alternate arrangements of the property that could allow more parking. And additionally, this is not unlike a case we've seen before where the problem isn't the parking or the buffering. The problem is the size of the building.
Yeah, it's got,
So this is packing in absolutely as much as can be packed in. How far can we push the boundaries? And can we get 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag?
Right.
So that would be my take on it. And that would seem to be the applicable standard, 154, 142 screening.
Mhm.
It's always, the zoning ordinance is clear when there are 2 competing standards, the more restrictive shall apply.
That's why we're here.
And as for the applicant, as for the neighbor, if you go by the zoning handbook published by the Michigan Municipal League, And the other training that we've had, it makes it clear that you should not grant a variance based on the present person's preference. Because
Right.
you're going to have new owners in the future. And in this case, if they were to share that drive, they'd have to have some sort of a permanent easement to take it into perpetuity. Otherwise, the next owner could very clearly cancel the neighbor's access to the driveway.
That would not be good.
Yeah, I don't see the neighbor's driveway as a factor here. The neighbor has a 99-foot lot as well. This is,
Yeah.
both of these are the largest lots on that street with the most buildable area.
I also, now that I'm rereading it, I wonder if the neighbor misunderstood where the barrier is going. Because he says constructing any type of a barrier in the middle of our shared property, i.e. driveway, would hinder egress. I wonder if he's thinking the barrier is going in the middle of the street.
It is.
Well, according, I
Yeah.
mean, on the plan, it's going on it's on the property.
Right, yeah, so this is the approved plan,
Right,
so then we have to, and this is the existing page street.
right.
So we have to tear this up and put this in here, so then he isn't gonna be able to make his 90, because when it was a public street, he could use this part to turn into his driveway.
So,
Now he doesn't, so now he can't make that 90.
Really, I don't like it.
We
So
put a hedge row in here.
because he went onto your property when he made the 90-degree turn?
Yes, so he does right now, and he did the public street, when he swerved out to get into your driveway.
Right, so I'm sorry, show me how he was doing it
Sir, if you could
before.
come to we're recording, so yeah. you
It's,
get here.
it's not a public street. It's
Yeah.
been abandoned and it's equally divided between the two owners, correct?
Correct, but what I'm saying is still the street is paved
Right,
Yeah.
now. And so right now he can drive in on the neighbors and the neighbor can drive on his. Good thing they get along. And that's how he makes his 90-degree turn in. Where if we ripped up essentially half that existing pavement and put in a shrub row, now he won't be able to make this 90 without cutting onto his grass.
so if you don't put the shrubs in, he's going to drive into your parking spots instead.
Not into the parking spots, but into the drive aisle. Yes, he'd be able to.
Well-
access.
So,
Okay.
So we're looking
No,
at-
it's parked there, yeah.
Well, no one's parked here. This is the drive aisle. They're all parked here.
Yeah, okay.
so
I don't see how that's ideal for a bed and breakfast either, to have someone
No,
drive
but
a boat into their.
I don't see how, I don't see, we're doing a variance for that guy in that lot. How does that pertain to the neighbor to give him the right to,
It doesn't. That's,
It doesn't.
that's
So
extra
I'm
detail in
saying-
the story problem.
you know, in looking at that thing, it doesn't, we're not giving his neighbor a variance or anything else. We're looking at this. So I can't worry about the neighbor if he can't drive in his driveway and get back out.
And if he needs to, he can convert his garage to a front entry instead of a side
He
entry.
absolutely could. He could make some changes himself personally. So that's how I look at that particular thing. Half that road could be used by them. The building, he said, could be turned 90 degrees to get more parking and everything else. And in that respect, they would have to put a screening or hedge all the way along there.
They have to anyway.
Yep. So the pavement would have to be torn up and a screening would have to be put in.
Which meets the standards.
Right, to meet the standard.
Yeah.
Right.
Speaking of the standards, what kind of discussion or questions do you guys have beyond that? If we could want to go through the standards and see what kind of questions we have related to them. Would you like to start that?
Well,
Yeah.
I'll take a look at one where it says the strict
Start the
compliance.
first one?
Yeah, with the compliance, of area setbacks, frontage height, bulk and all that. Would unreasonably prevent the owner from using a property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Well, he has a right to build on the property. That's, I mean, that's a given thing, and we've already given him that approval, but with those, with the 3 spaces. But looking at the building, if it's turned 90 degrees, he can get the rest of his parking spaces in there. But under this situation here, I see that, that's the only thing I can see that you'd have the right to put the screening up And so according to standard, it's not, right now, it's,
It's not unreasonably burdensome.
No,
is-
it's
is-
not
is the
unreasonably
way that-
burdensome.
That first standard
no, so,
stands off to me mostly that
Yep.
it's not unreasonably, not unreasonable to prevent them from using that as.
no, no, it's not. He can use it.
Yeah, it actually meets the,
So
meets
that,
the city ordinance
so
standards the way it
in
is.
a
the way
case
it's
like
done.
that it would meet.
Okay.
If I might ask a question, who approved the original, the existing, the previously approved plan? Was that administratively done or was that planning commission or?
Correct. It was administratively approved. Yep.
Even
So,
for a B and B, that's not a special use?
so it's a permitted use in that particular zoning district. And it's a residential, the zoning ordinance defines it as a residential structure.
Okay,
And the site plan review requirements, they're
Right.
specific about as far as what needs site plan approval and residential structures are kind of excluded from that with.
Okay.
There's some history related to some prior iterations that were going to go to the planning commission and then the applicant chose to modify the plans.
But after the evaluation, it met all, it obviously met all the requirements. And there's certain things that are probably not within our purview, such as lighting, such as particularly drainage, that type of thing. We're not dealing with that in this body, I assume.
Correct.
No. No. This is also the area where they changed the ordinance for the average, the setbacks on the front, so that actually fell within that change of the ordinance.
oh.
Yep.
That's why it's so close.
Mhm.
So that allowed them to be closer without having to get a variance
I'm kind of
to
remembering that.
maximize their building size.
Maximize, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, well, there's a pretty big question on that first one there. Richard, would you like to handle the second one, if you don't mind?
Sure. The variance should do substantial justice to the owner as well as to the other property owners in the district, or whether a lesser relaxation would give substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to others. The idea is that there was screening in accordance with the ordinance. And in the original plan, which was approved administratively after evaluation. And so I don't find that any further relaxation of the ordinance would be in order there.
And I would add that the purpose of the screening is for the benefit of the general community and the neighbors.
Yeah.
And there's no public purpose for removing it.
Right. Well, and you made a good point earlier, if I might add, that we're doing this for the property, it goes with the property, the zoning and anything, not the particular people that are there at this moment, because zoning is, neighbors may come and go, but zoning is forever, as they say. So
Kind of, sort of.
kind of, sort of, yeah.
Kind of, sort of, right?
We change
It can also
We
change.
change it.
Yeah, it can also change. All right.
So Richard, you feel that
Relief of that's standard 2 would further relief would not be met.
All right, Kate, number 3.
That the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to general neighborhood conditions. Yeah, I think the property clearly allows for them to build their bed and breakfast and to have the 3 required parking spaces. So I don't see how the property in any way is creating problems. So I would say that condition has not been met, as demonstrated by the previous approval of
Yeah,
the site plan.
right, it does, right. That, while it is unique, they were able to meet
Right.
our standards and everything like that. Okay, Jim, you want to take number 4, the last one?
Sure. That the problem is not self-created or based on personal financial circumstances. While I agree that it is not based on personal financial circumstances, I think the problem is self-created by the owner's desire to have more parking spaces and to eliminate the buffering to save the size of their building. So in that respect, I think the problem is self-created. So I would say the
So it
standard
wouldn't
is
meet-
not met.
Would not meet that. Well, so it seems as though we had a strong 3 no's out of the 4, and really the item number 3 also really was a no. I mean, not as strong, but the other 3 were pretty, always amazing when you read these things, how sometimes they pertain, sometimes they don't. And you have to go through them. Sometimes they're pretty easy to understand. Well, any other, let's talk. Is there any discussion beyond this of what we've talked about? That we've missed, or something that anyone else wants to bring up?
No, I think they've made a nice presentation of their case. The information is clear and it was what we needed to be able to apply the standards.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't seem to be a situation where sometimes where we are asked for a variance. We have very good documentation, which is wonderful. That's good on both sides. So thanks for asking for it. Thanks for providing it. Sometimes you say, well, geez, you could do this or that, and maybe that could happen down the road, or you could do this or that. This seems to me like we got a plan that meets it. And in this situation, for the request of this dimensional and the buffering, it's kind of like, well, we have a nice plan that meets it.
Yeah.
And yay, we get one that meets it. Sometimes you feel that way. But there are reasons that people have that, would like to maybe accomplish something else. I'm not going to be one to sit here and say that we don't need parking.
Right.
But we have parking problems everywhere. And it meets their required amount.
Right.
So that just has to that seems to fend for itself in this town all along.
Yeah.
So there are parking spots. So I would like to see if anyone would like to make a motion based on our findings of the standards and see how we vote.
I move to deny the variance request for 350 Mason Street based on the negative findings documented in the staff memo and our discussion provided to the ZBA for its April 13th, 2023 meeting.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
we have a motion by Kate and seconded by Jim Bout. Any further discussions before we go for a vote? Okay. All right, then there, I guess we would go for a vote.
Bonner,
Yes.
Bauk,
Yes.
Crawford,
Yes.
McMullen,
Yes.
and Kabazia.
Yes.
I don't know if the neighbors are going to like us, but
No. So
that parking would have been nice.
Matt, sorry, did not go through. We found that the original plan was substantial enough, so appreciate your application and all your drawing and time. Thank you. Okay. That was 350 Mason. Item B, under 6, agenda number 6 is 339 Culver, which is a lot coverage. I believe this is also due to a deck change. Is that correct, if I recall, Ryan? So,
Yeah.
Ryan, if you want to go ahead and give us your review, we'll listen to your information.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. You are correct. The applicant is requesting a dimensional variance for the construction of new decks at 329 through 339 Culver Street after the demolition of the east and west decks, which require a dimensional variance to increase the lot coverage to 29% instead of the 25% lot coverage, which is an increase of 4%. The applicants request the variance because they will lose the non-conforming rights of their current 29% lot coverage as they remove the two 60-foot square foot decks on the east and west elevations to build back a portion of the building after demolition, even if then the same footprint is considered an increase in the non-conforming lot coverage. Ultimately, there will be no net increase of square footage involved with this project, only the replacement of the two 6-foot by 10-foot decks.
Mhm.
The applicants are here this evening.
Okay, at this time, then we would ask the applicant to come forward, introduce yourself and present your information.
I'm Tim Straker at 333 Culver,
Okay.
board member for the association and a resident. I don't think there's a ton more for me to add. The building was built in 1983. No changes have taken place to anything since the building was built, which is why we're replacing every surface. So it's basically the resurfacing of the structure and those two decks that Mr. Cummins reviewed are the only thing sort of in question in terms of the last bit of resurfacing to do.
Okay. All right, maintenance happens, hopefully, sounds like,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Did you
After
say that was
40
built in
after 40
93?
years.
40 years.
83.
83, I was gonna say, I didn't think it was
When I was in high school, so we know that's old.
That can't be 40 years ago.
I know, right?
well, but you had to be a freshman, you couldn't have been.
Right.
Thank you for that.
A couple of years.
Yeah, all right. All right, well, thanks. If we have any further questions, we'll let you know. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to comment or not in favor or not in favor of the application? And nothing on, just Chris is online right now, right? Or Mark Ladinsky shows. Okay. Well, then what we will do is we will close, but
There were no letters on this.
No letters on this. Nope.
we can go ahead and close the public portion of it and go into our own deliberation and review any questions that we may have amongst ourselves. It seems pretty, without going to the standards, just on a upper view, it's seemed like something that was that way before. They're replacing it. It's something that comes up, and thank goodness we always catch these, that, you know, it's not just a rubber stamp thing that you can just go do it again, right? So I'm glad that this is caught by our zoning people, that even though it seems to be minimal, it is still a process to go through. So I'd like to see that.
And
It's interesting that I was there and they're already putting them all up. Is there a reason that we caught them
Mhm.
to now have them come back in for a variance? And Ryan, you adjust, and you,
Yeah, so a portion of the work was permitted and a portion of it was not permitted. So the east and west decks were not permitted, the other decks were permitted. So essentially the other decks had roof structure over them. So the decision was essentially that lot coverage for those decks really wasn't changing because the roof structure was already hanging over them anyway. So they really weren't reducing that lot coverage by taking the deck down and replacing it within the same footprint. And they met all the other zoning requirements as far as, you know, setbacks and that sort of thing. But the east and west decks, as you probably saw, don't have any roof structure or anything over them to make that same case. So at that point, they would be reducing that lot coverage by removing them and losing the rights to it. And then that's why they're here before you tonight to reestablish them.
okay. I was just curious, but being there and
Yep.
seeing that, I was wondering why that was done as compared to this.
Yep, very good question.
Presented to us. Okay, thank you.
Okay. What else, guys? Anything you can
I have no problem with this
question?
one.
I would say I
Fine with the
appreciate
app-
that people are maintaining their property and would
Yeah,
not want
Yeah.
it to be punitive about allowing
yeah,
them to do so.
absolutely.
And after that many years, I don't know if those
Yeah.
decks have been there that many years, safety wise
Yeah,
alone, to me, was the thing that stood out more than anything else. And yeah, and where they did put them directly over some of the existing structures that they were there.
Yeah.
And not only that, 6 feet, 10 feet, I mean, you think about different areas to people to walk down. Two people side by side, maybe on a deck sometimes, 6 feet, 10 feet. There's so many things for safety that I saw on that whole entire thing that, Bob, I wanted to just mention.
All right, well, that's good. So we're looking at an increase of 4% in lot coverage. Anything before we go into the standards?
yeah, and I don't even see it as an increase. in the
Well,
lot coverage.
yeah, it's not an
It would-
increase, it's,
Yeah.
it's just the
continue.
variance, yeah,
Yes.
continuance of that, right? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, yeah. With a fractional difference.
Yes.
Okay. Well, how about if we reverse it, Jim? You start with one, we'll go back the other way.
Okay. That strict compliance with area setbacks, frontage, height, bulk, or density would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Strict compliance would not prevent the applicant from using the property, as the requirement will only impact the replacement of the decks. However, the proposal is a reasonable request, as future conditions will be no more non-conforming than the present. The applicant simply desires to replace the decks within their existing footprint. As relates to this case, strict conformance with the ordinance would be unnecessarily burdensome to prevent a rebuilding and renovation project for a contributing resource. I think this standard has been satisfied.
Any comments on that?
I agree.
No,
Okay. I'll take the second one as long as we're in round here. Number 2 is that the variance would do substantial justice to the owner as well as to other property owners in the district, or whether a lesser relaxation would give substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to others. It would not increase, any non-conforming square footage, which is fine. And it does seem minor in nature. And those factors seem to be fair to the neighbors and any surrounding property or properties that would probably have this similar situation again. It could happen within other condos right along there. They're in that same era. So I would say it does meet that number 2 standard. Any other comments? Kate, 3?
That the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to general neighborhood conditions. The plight is unique based on the existing non-conforming square footage of the condominium building, so I think we can find that standard is met.
We agree that's a fairly understandable one, right?
Mhm.
And we know Richard's always reading up in front, so we don't want to goof him up. Remember last time you were reading or?
Well, yeah, but I know.
We're gonna give you number 4 on this one.
You must go in sequence. That the problem is not self-created or based on personal financial circumstances. The site conditions likely became non-conforming when the zoning ordinance or subsequent amendments were adopted. Additionally, the variance request has no relationship to project cost, but to improve the condominium building. Yes. I could wax philosophical, but I won't. This isn't. I was on the planning commission when this was approved back in '83, and I'm wondering if I should blame myself or someone. Or perhaps there was I'd like to think perhaps there was a change in the footage requirement.
Probably so.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Well, we did the best. we
That's
could.
pretty good history there, though. That's a-
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember it because we were just glad that it adhered to the new, for that time, 28-foot height restriction that we
Oh.
put in after the other condominiums were
Right.
built. And so therefore, we thought that that one looked very much better and more in scale.
I still think that every time I drive by it.
Yeah, right.
It is nice, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it's
Wow, that's where that came in.
it's in the direction of trying to make things look better, and they do. Okay, well, you didn't have one, Dick. Would you like to make a
I like-
motion?
Let's see here. Yeah. Like to make a motion to approve the variance allowed the maximum lot coverage 29% for the construction of the replacement decks at 329 Culvert Street. Approval of lot coverage variances conditioned upon the actual okay,
Demolition.
demolition, thank you very much, and reconstruction occurring within the same dimension as included in the applicant's materials.
Okay,
Support.
so we got a motion by Mr. Bont, second by Kate Poland. Any discussions? No, I don't think. I think we can go for vote on that, Sarah.
Bonnet,
Yes,
Bauk,
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
McCollum.
Yes.
And Kubasiak.
Yes. So decks away. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for the work.
You're welcome. Okay. Item C on our new business is an application for 865 Holland. And that's on page 28 of our packet, in case anybody's lost track. So at this point in time, Ryan, you're up to give us your review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a use variance to construct an addition to an existing two-family dwelling at 865 Holland Street. Because two-family dwellings are not a permitted use in the subject zoning district, the non-conforming use cannot be expanded. A use variance would allow the two-family dwelling to be considered a conforming use. And this by way of just a refresher for the zoning board of appeals, a use variance requires a 2/3 majority to approve. In this case, you only have 5 of you, so it would need to be at least 4 votes to approve.
Okay,
The applicant is here this evening.
okay, please step forward and state your name, if you would, please.
Yes, my name is Tim Woodby. My wife Rosemary, 500 Mill Street. We're the neighbor. We purchased a property in 2019. It had been in an estate. Half of the residence was occupied by estate members. The other was a rental. It has been a long-term rental for years. One of the renters moved. We thought this would be the opportunity to make some improvements to the internal structure. Excuse me, prior to this, we built a garage. Everything floated. It was wonderful. It was approved by the zoning. That was fine. When we came to the zoning to get the new approval, for the historic district, we were told, oh, you cannot do it as a non-conforming structure. We had gone to the trouble of getting a professional drawing. It was dovetail designs anyway. You can see that we wanted to make sure that it would be appropriate with the historic district. We were told you cannot proceed You need a variance. So we are here seeking a variance to the property through our own ignorance, or we did not know that we were non-conforming. The structure was built in 1976. The property to the north with a beauty salon. If you've been a resident for a while, you might have had your hair cut at Encinos. The house where we live was its parking lot. Over the years, we built our house, other houses have been built. Why did we buy this property? To be honest, we acted as a buffer. We want a buffer to Holland, and we also want to control our neighbors to the west. Without going further, we wanted to be in control of the property. We are seeking a variance. The house, excuse me, the dwelling needs adaptations for an adult, for a senior resident. Some of the door openings are 27 inches, the hallways are narrow, you couldn't get a walker down them. So we had a drawing made and we're seeking a variance to it. Why? Possibly it would become our own residence. We need your help. Well, we need your help. If we don't have your help, we have alternatives. We're flooded with requests to sell the property as it is. So anyway, we need a variance.
Okay. Well, we got some more questions. So Tim will ask.
If I have anything here.
All right. Is there anyone else that would like to bring up any information on for or against the application? Nobody online, we know. Is there, and we have nothing in correspondence in writing or nothing else as far as,
That's correct, Mr. Chair. Nothing else.
so. Okay. I think we're good to move on and then into our in the public comment side or the applicant side and go into our closed session of deliberation. And we will see what we think. So understandable that it let's see, it's got a situation where two families are not allowed. Now it's a duplex, but if they change it, it won't be a duplex. It'll still be a two-family, right? So to
Yeah,
speak.
You know,
Not duplicated, but
as I
close.
drove into town back in the sixties, the house was there, I think. I don't quite remember, but anyway, every time I drive into town, see that house, I never knew it was a duplex. It looked like a single family house.
Hmm.
So
There you go.
it was just to see this come up, I'm going, yeah, and then someone told me, yeah, there was a beauty shop.
Yes, I got my haircut there.
Oh,
That was over to the side,
so
different building.
anyway, even then, when you had your haircut, I still thought that was a single family house. It just looked like it, that's the way it should be.
Right.
Anyway, my comment.
So it'll still be a 2-unit if they get a variance, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, any things that, it looks like the addition portion that they're showing would line up with the garage, right?
Yeah.
That must have met the setback or the setback that was part of the zoning requirement. When was the garage built? Not too long ago. Yeah,
Garage was constructed in 2000,
2000.
excuse me, 2020 during the pandemic.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's when it was
I knew it
constructed.
hadn't been there forever, but I
had
didn't know when
not.
it was built.
So, and all the setbacks, even with the addition, all the setbacks
Right.
and the coverage is satisfactory. So
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anybody have any
Yes, I do.
things? Yes.
I go to 154.174, which is non-conforming uses, lots and structures, and this is like a preamble in our zoning ordinance. And it states, and I'm quoting, non-conforming lots, structures and uses, so long as they exist, prevent the full realization of the goals and objectives of the city of Saugatuck master plan and the objectives of this chapter. Upon the adoption of this chapter or subsequent amendments, there are lots, structures and uses of land and structures which were lawful prior to the adoption of this chapter or the relevant amendment thereto, but which are not now in conformance. It is the intent of this chapter to permit these lawful non-conforming lots, structures, and uses to continue, but with the exception of non-conforming residential structures, not to encourage their prolonged existence. And there is a difference between rental residential and residential. This is not purely residential. This is a rental property, a rental residential. So the goal of the zoning and this preamble is not to extend, to allow them continue, but not to encourage their prolonged existence. And if we allow a use variance here, it goes with the land.
Right.
So this becomes a duplex forever in a non-conforming, in a zone that doesn't allow that.
Mhm.
So I would think it should exist as long as it exists, but when it's time to change it, it should become conforming. And it would not, we've got a statement in here about demolition would be prohibitive. Well, demolition would not be required to convert this to a single family, a single detached home.
Yeah.
Right, you probably have to remodel it.
Well, the
but-
whole thing could
if
be a
you-
single family. Like I said, I thought it was a single family house.
Yeah. You just have to take out the dividing wall,
Dividing
which
wall.
would be non-structural. So
That roof goes clear across one side, the
Yeah,
other.
and you'd have two kitchens. I mean, I'm sure you would need to do remodel.
yes, you'd have to do some remodeling, but
Right.
it could become a very nice single family detached home.
Yeah, and I would argue, I don't even know if the rental part of it is a factor. It's still a two-family home where
Yeah.
it's not allowed in the district.
Right.
Yeah, you're not changing the current function.
Right. It's
I
still
guess if
residential.
that's the word, but it functions, it can continue to function. That's not the question that we're
Yeah.
in front of us.
But I know, I mean, we've discussed this many times at planning commission. You probably recall, I think I was even on the planning commission when we wrote that ordinance and. I mean, that's the idea, to not continue,
Right. And I don't think
not
there's
expand nonconformities.
I don't think there's anything unique about the lot that requires it to be changed.
Given that use variance.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, that's a good sized property. At least what it shows.
Yeah.
Well,
So that
any other observations that somebody sees or come across on this?
Well, what are you saying there? If maybe I'm dense. I mean, I understand that non-conforming things would ordinarily not be added on to or that type of a thing. And then they'd be allowed to go away eventually. But are you saying that would augur against granting this?
Yes,
Yes.
Right. Because we're increasing them.
You're increasing
expanding
that
the
non-conforming.
non-conforming use.
and you're allowing it to continue forever.
Now, if the applicant came to us and said, I'm converting this to a single family house and I'd like to put, well, I guess the addition isn't even non-conforming once it's a single family house.
Yeah, then it'd be totally conforming.
It's
So,
Right,
totally conforming.
because it's
and you
within the
could do that,
setbacks, right?
because he has the area
yeah. and it-
setback, all the other requirements due to that part of it.
And it would be a very desirable house. It's a big house on a nice lot in a nice part of town in a nice neighborhood.
I'm quite now, I'll have to say, if this goes to 76, I finally found something that was before my time, which is gratifying. But except for the more recent trend of these Airbnb things, and of course, this rental phenomenon that we're most acquainted with, I feel probably that this was allowed there because this was sort of a rundown area at one time. The sewer, there was the sewer, whatever that substation. was
lifting,
Oh, right.
yes.
There was actually, back in the really old days, there would be a smell emanating from there. This got to be called a substandard housing area. And that's the way that it was. And also even in the seventies, there was a sense of housing, affordable housing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, I'm sure, there was a bit of, even when I was on the planning commission, there was still a bit of a vision for possibly allowing some areas for duplexes as an entree to an affordable housing
Yeah.
situation, which even then was starting to escalate. And so now, unfortunately, the days of people living side by side like that in a duplex is a little more economical living space is kind of gone by the boards in favor of weekenders and whatnot, but I'm just not sure. It's interesting that there's a couple of points of view here.
Well, yeah, I don't have any problem with duplexes, except it's just not allowed in that district. I mean, I'm not, I
Right.
think it can be argued that
Right.
it should be,
There is a district where
but it's not.
multifamily homes are allowed, so.
yeah, and we should probably have more of them, but we don't, so. It's
Well,
the way it is.
Right. I mean, I surely can understand the interest in wanting to upgrade, as we always do, make it, let's say, more comfortable handicap or whatever. But on the other hand, it is a functioning 2-unit thing right now.
Right.
So it's not that
Right.
it's not that it's unfunctionable. It doesn't
Mhm.
as desirable as having a laundry room in an area and all that stuff. But so
It's also
But-
possible to remodel the building without expanding it.
Right.
Oh, absolutely could be.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are options here. Make it single family or continue.
sure,
Yeah.
interior options. Well, let's do the standards. And Kate, you start on this one.
Okay. That the property in question cannot be used for any of the uses permitted in the district in which it is located. I think we've established that the property in question can indeed be used for single family residence, which is permitted in the district. Or it could continue as a 2-family without the addition. So I would say that standard is not met.
In your opinion, okay. All right, Dick Bach?
That the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to general neighborhood conditions. Well, the plight is unique. It is likely one of the limited number of non-conforming uses in this subject zoning district and the vicinity. So as Jim was talking, in that vicinity, you think about it, you can't, I don't think it meets that standard.
Anybody have any input on Dick's observation of that?
I think that's fine.
So that does not meet that standard, is what you were saying.
Mhm.
All right. Jim Bob, you want to do 3?
Yeah, certainly. That by granting the variance, the essential character of the neighborhood would not be altered. Granting the variance itself would have no impact on the essential character of the neighborhood. However, it would allow for building to be expanded in accordance with other dimensional requirements. But to me, the character of the neighborhood is single-family detached homes. It wouldn't alter that because it's there now, but
Right.
it would grant it in perpetuity. So I think it does change the character of the neighborhood by granting that forever. So I would say that that standard is not met.
Yeah, by expanding it.
That's probably the main issue of that whole statement right there is character of the neighborhood, right?
Yes.
Okay. And Richard, got you the old financial one.
Yeah, that the problem, that the problem is not self-created or based on personal financial consideration, circumstances. While the building was likely constructed, in a compliant manner prior to the two-family residential building limitation. That's, I don't know if that's true or not, but that was, it's possible.
You can almost,
I'm trying to see if there's another side, there's a couple
almost say
sides.
it does meet that in the sense of that it was, if you look at it, that it was probably built when it was compliance, but things change, you know?
Yeah,
And
The financial circumstances, though, if it's just so they can more easily rent the property.
well, it could be functional use, could be personal use too, I guess that's true. For the
well, it was
expansion.
stated, I mean, and I believe it was stated, couched more in the application as a personal use in terms of being granting ingress and egress and in terms of an aging population.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I didn't see where it was to be rented for financial gain, but more as a possible, usage. But I don't know that
Yeah,
fact.
no, we don't.
We don't know that fact, but we don't know that that's not the fact.
Yeah, right, yeah,
That's true.
for sure. So would you say that standard is met?
I personally
But the
think it might be
problem's
met.
not
It's
so
real close. It's real close.
I'll go either way. I'd say it's met.
I could go either way. I
I
think
think
it is
the
met.
standard is met, if you think of it. I mean,
I
it's not, it's not
I could
self-created,
agree
and
with
it's
that.
not based on personal financial circumstances.
Yeah.
Well, that standard is met.
Now, in that review, of course, in order to approve a standard, you have to meet all four standards.
Right.
We didn't, I think in our discussion and finding the fact that three of the four were not, and one of the four was, seems like. Is that?
Mhm.
how
Which
you-
one of the
how you-
four did, if I might ask,
Three of the four were not met, 1 through 3 were not met.
which of the one that was met was it?
Number four.
Number 4,
Number 4,
yeah, number 4,
that's the one that you just did,
the one you did.
feels met.
You felt like the problem then is not self-created or based on,
I don't see it as a huge self-created, but yeah, the problem, because it's a use situation, sometimes. Not to say that use can't be self-created or personal and financial, there surely can be, so, but. I think that it's seems to be more dimensional in this case than a situation where they're wanting to add on.
Well, I think it goes back, Jim, what you're saying, the residential, I mean, 2 families and everything that you were talking about previously. Under, what was it, 154, 174?
Yes.
And I think that's, I think that's one of them,
To allow them to continue, but not to encourage their prolonged existence.
right? To continue as they are, but not to add and prolong.
Right,
the
expand,
situation.
yeah.
So I think it's a really good one to base it on, is 154.174.
Mhm.
So,
Well, the basis of a motion would, based on our findings would be to deny, based, on the fact that it does not meet all the standards. Or we could make a motion that it says that it, does not meet all the standards, 1 through 3. You could even spell out that,
yeah,
you could say if we do or don't agree, don't have to, but, that would be part of however we want to build a motion.
Yeah, and I would reference the section you mentioned as well.
Yeah, I would also. And the motion should reference 174.
Yeah.
You have any questions or anything else, you guys? Well, Mr. 174, do you want to?
Let's see if we can do this here. I move to deny a use variance to allow a two-family dwelling as a permitted use at 865 Holland Street based on the findings after a review of the standards. Excuse me. I move to deny a use variance to allow a two-family dwelling as permitted at 865 Holland Street based on a review of the standards and the findings that standard 1 is not met, standard 2 is not met, standard 3 is not met, and standard 4 is met. And based on the ordinance paragraph 154.174 for non-conforming uses, lots, and structures.
Support.
Okay, so we do have a motion. And we have a second. First motion was by Jim Bout and Kate. On the second, any discussions based on how the motion was presented and seconded?
My apologies to Sarah for making that as complicated as I could.
And this is when we say, Sarah, are you comfortable with the way that was presented and you're able to get the notes?
Yeah.
Okay. I think it second time through it went pretty good. Then I guess we'd like to move on to the vote.
Okay.
Roll call.
Bonnet,
Yes.
Bauk,
Yes,
Crawford,
Yes.
McCollum,
Yes.
Kubasi.
Yes. All right, so it's unanimous. We did not approve the request for the use variance on 865 Holland Street. All right, our last item under new business is number D, 181 Park Street. And nice to see you again. Oh, that could be arranged. Steve, that could be arranged.
we do have an open.
You gotta move here first though, right?
We have an opening for an alternate.
I'm Steve Scheller, 181 Park Street.
We need to start with Ryan.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. Yep. So
Sorry, I jumped it. Sorry. Steve.
Yeah.
Sorry.
that's all right. I think everyone's familiar here that,
Yeah.
so more familiar than I am actually, because everybody predates me, but the applicant is requesting a dimensional variance to construct a garage at 181 Park Street, which requires a dimensional variance to reduce the front setback to 15 feet instead of the minimum 25-foot setback for lots fronting on Park Street, which is a reduction of 10 feet. As you know, the applicant was before you previously for lot coverage variance. At the time of those previous applications, they thought they had a compliant setback on their plans, and when they submitted for their recent zoning permits, the 25-foot setback from Park Street was flagged. Other rights of way in that particular zoning district do have a 15-foot setback. So the 25-foot was flagged. They've kind of took a look at their survey, make sure all the lines and everything were correct. We took a look at that for a while, and then we're at the point where the 25-foot setback is still a concern. So they're before you this evening.
So
So
this was approved
a lot coverage variance. was
Lot
approved.
coverage.
and the plan showed the garage where it is now.
Yeah,
Correct.
but they're, if I'm speaking
Right.
out there, their assumption it was for
They should have put it all over.
20-foot setback. Not, and it was showed 20-foot,
15-foot.
or I'm sorry, 15?
Right. They thought the setback was 15.
And we saw it here, or was it planning? I can't
Yeah, we
remember.
no, went through zoning,
Okay,
yeah,
and we approved it.
correct. We also approved their original plan of the
For the home.
buildable, for the building, right?
Right.
But then you came back for
The garage.
for the.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so anyway,
Not that you want to read. a little bit.
Thanks for having us. Steve Scheller, 181 Park Street, my beautiful bride Maureen. Yes, so December, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of details, but December 2019, we were in here for the first one. We did not get coached up well. And we went for the square footage variance. I think we were over 1.9 or 2% over, and that was granted. Thank you. But at that time, we were unaware there was another setback variance needed. And the plans showed the garage in exactly the same place it is today.
Okay.
So at that point, we thought everything was fine, got to building. The garage was always going to be a phase two. Got through the building. Phase two happens. We went through COVID, and in large part because of COVID, we our zoning and the building permit lapsed or expired. So last May, we were in here asking for just an extension. Same story. We didn't get coached up well. And at that point, we could have asked for this lot setback variance.
Right.
So I wasted some time there. Next story, we come to finding people that are interested in building a one-car garage. Not very many builders are interested any longer. They want the $7 million houses. So I finally get a couple prices. One of them was okay. And he goes through the motions of getting a building permit. And Ryan informs him that we need, he didn't say we need a variance. We don't fall into the legal definition. Okay. So I called my surveyor to make sure that the right of way is in fact the property boundary, and it is. And so what that reveals is 15-foot back needs a variance. So here I am. Sarah, can you drive? And there's a bunch of things I've got here. You
put out this plan.
do you put them on the overhead?
Starting up.
The plans that you submitted?
There's a photographs and.
We
whatnot.
have all of
We
it.
have all-
Okay.
We have the whole packet in front of us.
So what I've done,
We'll pull it up for you, sir.
this is the survey that shows the original shed and the proposed garage, and you'll notice that the garage is actually farther back than the shed. Why is that important? Well, if somebody was wanting to worry about what I'll call the massing in the architectural world of having something close to the street, this is farther back than the shed, and the shed was there for years, and I don't believe we had any complaints.
Right.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So you see this right here? That is the original shed.
Right.
There's a picture in here of that. So, well, again, the only reason I put that in, there was a little history of it was there for years, and I don't believe anybody complained about the setback of the shed, and the proposed garage is even farther back 5 foot than that. The other thing that you'll note is a chart I put in here. Mom always told me, you know, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but several of these photographs and the chart that I prepared reveal that there are plenty of other people upstream and downstream on Park Street that don't meet this standard. 2 of them are even inside the right of way, the way I measured it. There's a couple of
Street.
JPEGs on the actual look of the thing. The garage is pretty tasteful, so I think the neighbors should be happy with that. As I said, there's a chart in here. I think the perspective is everything, and the reason I wrote the final the final column of the chart, distance from the structure to the edge of the pavement. This one right here.
Right.
My current right of way is 10 foot 3 inches back from the edge of the pavement. Now, the edge of the pavement can wash away and everything else. I also put the center of the road here. That's more consistent. It doesn't wash away. Regardless, if 10 foot 3 is the setback, and this photograph Ryan gave me, it's actually incorrect. It actually shows my property that I own Park Street this red line actually is 10'3" on this side.
Yeah.
The property right away and the property boundary are one and the same, and there's 10'3" from the edge of the edge of the road. So what does that mean? A lot of people would say, well, 10'3" is, what happens if we want to put a sidewalk in the future? 10'3" is what the city right of way is, okay? What the ordinance asked for was 25 foot back from that. So basically 28 foot or 38 foot back. Well, I have a non-conforming lot and it's 37 foot at the lake and 39 foot something at the road. The reason we had to build the house in a shotgun format, kind of long and vertical, was the entry door, and many of these shotgun houses are on the side. Reason is if we had our front door on the front of the house, there would be an unnecessary square footage taken up by a corridor that gets you all the way back. So many of these houses that are shotgun style have entrances on the middle, on the side. Well, that is what I have. And there is a photograph here of the house. And the important thing there is that little red arrow right there.
64.
That stake right there, right here, that red arrow right there, and that stake. See that? That's the back corner of the southeast corner of the proposed garage. And you'll see that the entrance there is a sidewalk. It comes up pretty much close to the house here. If we were going to move the garage 10 feet further back, 25 foot versus 15, it would be basically 4 to 5 feet away from the edge wall here of the house. And it would funnel all the guests and whatnot into a situation where they have to turn sharply left and hug between the garage and the house. And that's, to me, that's unnecessarily burdensome because all the other neighbors upstream and downstream of me seem to have not the 25-foot setback.
And you built the walkway
Yeah.
based,
That's a new walkway.
based on your understanding that the garage was
Right.
approved.
Right. What else? Lauren?
Feel like if the garage had to be pushed back, it would be a safety hazard in the event that there would be a fire
Yeah.
or a medical emergency trying to get equipment. in
Through
there.
Through that narrow area.
And then I do just want to add a couple other things because we want our street company to let you guys see.
Yeah.
We want to know that we are aware of everything going on on our street and we are advocates of making Kirk Street as nice a place as we can. And by having this garage, we can move our car. Right now, it actually is almost right on the street where we park it.
Oh,
So it would pull it off that area, allowing people, well, if it wasn't already, they weren't already blocked by our neighbors, concrete barrier thing, they could walk over there. And we've also, been involved with events on the street like that, the next kind of things that are out there getting water and all that kind of stuff. So we are aware that the space issue is a problem on Park Street, but we feel like doing this will actually provide more area for walkers there. Because our car won't be right up next to Park Street. So,
Your current slab that's there now.
Correct.
That's
I'll
new.
call it the tarmac, yeah.
Yeah. That's much nicer than slab. Is that, was that stopped at the intent that that's would have been the 20-foot setback, or is that?
No,
What's that dimension of that
I'll tell you where that came from. One of the
that's there now?
Yeah, one of the photographs from when we purchased it in 2019. This tarmac was there at that time. All we did is resurface it.
Oh, okay.
And so that just happens to be the length of a
Okay,
car.
I
If
wasn't-
you notice at the
It
front of it,
looked newer and I didn't know
yeah.
what the intent of.
But it's coming out? For the
No, the
garage?
tarmac stay,
Oh, okay.
there is one exhibit that shows what's going on here in large scale. This one right here.
Yeah, that was a little confusing.
And compared to the tarmac that we're talking about, that pad that you poured there,
Yes,
does the garage start at the back of that pad?
no, it goes. It's can you see here? So basically the garage back here, this is the hard corner that Ryan's looking for me to meet, okay? That is 15 foot from the right of way. This is my property boundary, which is the right of way.
Yeah.
15 foot back from there and then perpendicular hits that nearest corner.
Where is the back edge of the concrete pad that's there
Right there
now? Oh,
So I have to pour more tarmac.
okay, so your garage is rearward of that.
Yes.
Okay,
And this is that old shed. So
Right.
and actually further back, a lot further back than that. There
was
corner
there,
of
yeah.
that.
okay. Thank you.
And the garage would be 28 feet from the edge of the pavement?
Yeah, so from the edge of the pavement. This line is 10'3", this property line right here.
Okay.
So the pavement is, the
Oh, I
edge
see,
of the
okay.
pavement is
I
out
got you.
here. 10'3" back from that is the property line.
Okay,
I have to be 15 foot to the nearest.
from the
corner.
property line, gotcha.
So that means I'm 28'3" back from the edge of the road.
Gotcha. Just kind of, I don't know, visually when I think of a 20-foot setback or whatever foot setback, it's the edge of the road, not,
I put a lot of,
not your property line, you know?
there was a lot of stuff here and I'm sure that's the reason I'm last on the agenda, but.
Only in the order they were received, I promise.
You've done a lot of research.
I have,
A lot of trees got cut down.
More than you ever thought you would need.
Yeah. There is, you'll notice. One of the photographed. Is a garage a couple doors north of me. Hold on a minute. It didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't end up on my, on the chart. 255 Park Street. That garage,
Yeah, that's a good one.
that's a good one for me, but I didn't put it on my chart.
255.
55 Park Street. And from the edge of the roadway, 255 Park Street to that corner right here.
Mhm.
Edge of this roadway right here, the edge of asphalt to that corner is 11'10". Meaning if 10'3" was a line that
Oh,
was in front of my house, that's only a foot.
off the
Okay,
property
it's
line.
not 15 foot, it's not 25 foot, it's a foot.
Right.
And so I guess what I would argue is, I don't think I'm your problem.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, that's,
You may be.
You're not as big a problem.
Expanding the problem.
yeah,
but-
that's true. Somebody asked,
Even,
in June, I'm gonna go from full-time to part-time. And at that point, Maureen and I will be 4 days at least up here a week. So we don't rent. This is our place and I'm tired of lugging the weed whackers up to the attic. I literally, weed whackers and bush hedge clippers, they're all in my attic.
Should have left the shed.
Yeah,
Should have left the shed.
yeah.
Well, if we don't work.
Yeah, I suppose you would have.
I think at this time, we're good. So Steve, if we do, we'll get back to you. Okay, then we'll close, see if we have anybody else, no one else left in the audience, anyone online that would like to make any comments? Yeah. Okay. All right, close the public portion and we'll go into our private discussions.
Well, it sounds like we, being the city, kind of blew this one. Is that safe to say?
Kate, I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I
I think
don't.
the city dropped the ball on this one.
How so?
If they were led to believe that their plan was
Oh,
conforming.
A lot of things happened in the previous administration.
Oh, I know, and I'm,
That's what she's saying.
that's what I'm saying, but I mean,
They were led-
nevertheless, I mean,
Yes,
the city
But-
dropped the ball.
regardless, I've driven by there
It started.
several in both directions looking at it, and my primary concern was our responsibility that the public safety be secured.
Right.
And if this is built where it is, I didn't see any obstructions for traffic or pedestrians or anything. It looks to be a safe thing to do.
I agree, and some of the examples and some of the
Yeah.
curves on Park Street, absolutely not, but this, in this case,
You-
I felt the same way.
Yeah, I did too. And visiting the site, you could walk past that garage very easily and have plenty of room and not have to worry about the cars.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that in this respect, safety was an issue too. You're right, with all those other sites back and forth and looking at this chart here, 6'3" from the road. Yeah, and one of these other sites, I understand. So
Yeah.
Right,
I-
there's.
Yeah,
As tall as Steve is, he isn't our biggest problem if we happen to go further north, right?
yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
And it is a very unique lot.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, and I would
Well,
say.
the area starts that way, right
Yes.
in there is where it changes.
I would say if you had built the house and then decided you wanted to build a garage close to the street, but you hadn't left room for it, that might be a different story. That gets back to the idea of maximizing the
Yeah.
square footage on a lot, but given that you were led to believe the plan would work.
Yeah, putting a house in a 40-foot wide lot is not
Well,
easy.
Yeah.
The house was there. They just remodeled it
Yeah.
and smoothed out the sides because it had been
You
added
built the
onto.
house. Yeah, you did build it.
There was a house there.
Yeah, but it
So,
did a nice job with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's, any other questions? We can go through the standards and see how we find them, okay?
Okay.
All right, Richard, number one.
strict compliance, I'm assuming it's this, Richard.
Well, let's assume that.
That's true. We did put two of you together, didn't we? Uh-oh.
The strict compliance with area setbacks, frontage, height, bulk, density would unreasonably prevent the owner from using the property for a permitted purpose or would render conformity unnecessarily burdensome. Well, the dwelling is approximately 55 feet from the right of way, with a 25-foot setback requirement. Only 10 feet would remain between the garage and the dwelling of that house. If placed in a compliant manner, in this case, requiring such a tight placement of the buildings on a narrow property may be considered unreasonably burdensome. And with the setback the way it is, I looked at this also as a safety issue, that it still would be safe enough to have that variance that we need to give them and still make it safe. I feel it is met.
I wouldn't disagree. I would agree with that.
Mhm.
So Richard, to the right of Richard, you want to do number
Sure.
two?
Sure. That a variance would do substantial justice to the owner as well as to other property owners in the district, or whether a lesser relaxation would give substantial relief and be more consistent with justice to others. As we've seen from the pictorials, the applicant has indicated that several existing buildings have similar or lesser setbacks than the proposed 15-foot setback for the garage. A 15-foot setback will still allow for sufficient space between the building and the right of way so that it would not give a cramped or cluttered appearance along the street frontage. And also, I would note the safety for the general public aspect there would be intact. As such, a variance may give substantial relief to the applicant and allow for justice for neighboring property owners.
Okay. Any comments from anybody on that?
I think that standard is satisfied.
Mhm.
Okay. Kate?
That the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances of the property and not to general neighborhood conditions. The site, as we've said, is unique based on its width and area as well as the placement of the existing home. So I would say that standard is met.
Okay, anyone else? Any comments on that? If we all agree, I'll go ahead and do number 4. That the plight is the problem, sorry, is not self-created or based upon personal financial circumstances. I don't think the problem is not self-created. The conditions are unique and compliant. As we discussed in our earlier deliberation, I think that the variance has no additionally, that the variance request has no relationship to the project cost at all. So I believe they're just trying to get themselves a functioning garage, which is not exactly a 2-car big truck garage, you know?
No.
It's a garage where you can put weed eaters and things like that, huh? So I think it meets that standard. Do people agree with that at all?
Yes.
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 So our findings of review of the standards and earlier comments, it seems that we find that review shows us it does meet all 4 standards. I would ask, is there someone who would like to make a motion?
I move to approve a front yard setback variance reduction from 25 feet to 15 feet for the construction of a 12-foot by 20-foot detached garage at 181 Park Street, based on the positive findings documented in the staff memo provided to the ZBA for its April 13th, 2023 meeting. This approval is contingent upon the construction being compliant with the garage location, design, and size as proposed and included in the ZBA variance applicant materials.
I'll second that.
Dick Pont seconds that. Any discussion on that after that? I think we did talk about Jim brought up the public safety earlier, which I think is part of.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have to be in the motion. It is in our discussion. So I think that's a good one to have to hang our hat on or something
Yes.
like that. In case somebody down, we'll say to the north, comes along and says, well, they got it. Excuse me, there is still some safety factors or viewed.
And it's the location of the road, the curvature of the road, and
Yeah,
just the general conditions in this area make this, in my opinion, a very safe condition.
And I second what Jim is saying, that by far, as you notice, that was part of my motion too.
well, I want to, I guess the question was, is that covered enough in our recording? Are we comfortable with
Can I
that?
add
Or
it?
do we feel it should be added to the motion that, that is, also in review of the standard, that it was also public safety was one of the biggest considerations of meeting the standards.
I think we would have to amend the motion.
Add that.
Yeah,
Can
if
I-
you want to amend it and do a friendly amendment, and okay.
Thank you.
And I second that.
Yes,
amendment,
okay.
Yeah,
I just see that as a futuristic
Yeah,
Thought.
for sure.
very much so, because we've been confronted with a lot of stuff on that street.
Well,
And we will
Be in
be,
the future.
continue to be confronted with it.
right, right.
Yeah, no comment.
Okay. All right, then, at that point, we can call for a vote.
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hopper,
Yes.
McFarland,
Yes.
Yes. So, Stephen Maureen, you get a 20 by,
Hopefully, we'll get
if
back
you
to
still got a contractor,
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows if you got a contractor to do it or not, but. No, you won't.
Buddy.
You're getting caught up. Don't put a
Next
pool in, okay?
week it's denied.
It'd be a kid's wading pool if you're gonna do that. It doesn't require a variance. Okay, well, let's wrap up our meeting here then. Thank you.
Good luck. Sorry, I'm
Appreciate it.
sorry.
Yep, we'll be in touch to get you your zoning permit. So, yep.
All right, under communications, number 7, we have a reminder that we do have a training on May 18th at 3:30. Is that free?
Correct, Mr. Chair. It starts at 3:30 here at City Hall. And by way of background too, we've been trying to work with our the tri-community municipalities on doing joint trainings. So we did invite the ZBA members from Douglas and Saugatuck Township. So some of them may be, in the room and joining as
Great.
well.
Good.
Our planning commission, I'm gonna let them know at their meeting next week that, they're welcome to attend it. It'll be a public meeting, you're gonna have a quorum, so anybody's welcome to come and learn. But we hopefully will have quite a few here to take advantage and learn from your very own city attorney, Chris Patterson. So very, I think he's got some good stuff for you to plan. On that note, I know you kind of discussed last meeting that you were kind of thinking through some questions or particular items that you might want him to cover. Hoping if you have that information, any questions in particular that you would like him to cover during his training. We could get that relatively soon. That way he has some time to prepare. So
I put together a brain dump and sent it to everybody.
Yeah.
Did you get it?
Yeah,
Got it.
Whether or not you read it, doesn't matter.
I
but-
did get it.
Okay,
Brent.
and I will
It's very good.
review it this week.
And it's,
So we've got a draft, I guess is what we're
Okay.
saying, Ryan.
and
There could be a couple additions, but.
Okay.
So,
I would like to add a discussion of standard number 2. I just don't quite understand.
Okay.
The wording of that.
how to more clearly interpret it.
Yeah, maybe I just don't get it. The justice to the owner and
I tend
justice
to
to.
trip over that and I always
I
get
don't know what that
stuck.
means. What does that mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'd be curious to hear more.
I'm sure that you guys can handle that one.
I've talked to
It's
Bill.
a state set thing. It's not like.
Oh, it
you guys
is?
get to write- Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
like, in that it's a state set statement.
Oh,
so it's
then
not
no
like-
one will be.
No, no,
able
no,
to-
no, it's-
No one will be able to understand.
We can't change the
explain it.
words, but we should understand what the intent,
Yes.
how it's written in other laws. So
If,
that's,
if whoever wrote it. even
Right.
knows what they intended.
Yeah.
That'll be the question.
I happened to talk to Bill Schumacher. He's the chairperson of the ZBA in Douglas.
Uh-huh.
And he'd mentioned that they was gonna be at the,
Oh, good.
and-
That's great.
And they tend to, we were just shooting the ball a little bit, and they tend to use that word hardship more than we do. I mean, we kind of get at it a couple of different ways and,
Yeah, plate.
and, but so I'd be interested to try to learn.
Yeah.
We've used that quite often, hardship. You have to prove that it is.
a little harder to prove, yeah,
Mhm.
sometimes.
Sometimes it's hard to prove that.
Hmm.
So we can't give them a variance if they really can't prove that. They give you an answer, they give you a statement, now prove it.
Right.
That's a tough thing, yeah. And I know it's,
the other one I've got on there is self-created. There's a lot of legal opinions on what's self-created and what's not. So clarifying that
Oh, yeah.
is an item that we'd like to cover as well.
Yeah, we should know what, we should know what that means legally if we're.
Jake, if you don't, I'm sorry, just you don't mind. Yeah, that way if somebody's watching back later.
Yeah,
they
now
can-
that no one else is here, Jim, I did want to say that your insight system, self-created hardship, I think it was the first request, Airbnb. Demonstrated a pretty adept understanding of how that should be applied. And sometimes I think it's easy to get out in the weeds with the self-created hardship thing and say, well, if they weren't trying to pursue this development, then they wouldn't need this variance. So it's self-created, and that's kind of, and I've seen that in other jurisdictions, and that can kind of be like cyclical logic.
Right.
But the finding that reason why they need the variance for the parking space is because they are proposing such a big structure. That is a self-created hardship.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm sure Chris will have a lot more to say about it, but I do think it's very relevant that you brought that up.
Good.
Mhm.
Appreciate it. Well, and that's it for communications, nothing else?
Nothing else from me.
Can
Mr.
we
Chair.
go into any ZBA comments, which we may have just had? Any other ZBA comments for tonight? And that takes us on to public comments and Jay, Trent's out there, I guess, you know. So that's it for online. We can call it adjourned. Thank you guys for, we had four full ones, and thanks Ryan for getting all your work done and getting it to us.
Not a problem, Mr. Chair. If we could just have a motion and a second to adjourn.
Oh, we have some.
Yeah, and a vote.
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Thank you.
I third.
All in favor?
Perfect. All right. Excellent. Thank you.
That's funny.
I know.
Seems like a weird thing.
I don't get that.